So I have these beautiful sign up and sign in forms. They don't do anything yet. They can, but they don't. So the first thing we're going to do is we are going to wire up this sign in with Google because it's the simplest right now. They don't necessarily need to have created an account yet. We know that we have Google accounts. We can use that. And just to show like how easy it is to get OAuth working, and depending on your need, that might be enough. You might try to just turn on, Facebook, Twitter, and Google signups, and not necessarily like manage your own users. That's a total option. You don't need to do email and password signups. You can if you want. So we'll start out with the sign in with Google sign in option first, and then we'll kind of flush out the rest of it in a little bit. Might have to get a new API key at some point. But let's get this in place for the time being. And we'll go into Firebase, and now we're bringing in another module. So we'll say import, and we'll say Firebase/auth. This will bring in this will basically patch that Firebase instance with the authentication logic. And we'll do something very similar to what we did before. We'll say export const auth equals Firebase.auth. And we're going to give ourselves two other things. We're going to do the provider, which is like for one of our sign-in techniques, what is the OAuth provider in this case? And it's going to be Google. So we'll say provider equals new Firebase Google Auth provider. And I don't want to deal with that ever again, so I'm going to give myself one more constant, which is sign in with Google. And that is going to be auth dot sign in with Google. I will pass it that provider. All right, so now I have a function called sign in with Google that I can use. And anyone want to take a wild guess what's going to happen when that function gets called? Not all at once.
Get the pop-up window that says, do you want to let them use your Google account?
Yep. So let's go ahead on the sign-in one. And we'll say on click. Let's sign in with pop-up. There's a bunch of, you can do sign in with redirect, you can do sign in with pop-up, you can do a few of these. So now you can go ahead and pick myself. Let's make this a function. I did the thing to myself this time. Cool, so we'll sign up with Google. We'll get the pop-up. We'll select it. We'll head back in. Nothing happens at this point because we're not doing anything with that information. Right? We are technically authenticated, but our application doesn't know. Right? Now that will return a promise that I can do stuff with, but just like subscribing to updates, I can do something very similar where I can detect whenever the auth state changes, and then update my application state based on that. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. And so we'll do that in application. And so before, we had this unsubscribe, and I'm going to rename that unsubscribe from Firestore. Because now I've got multiple things I need to unsubscribe from. Cool. So we'll go ahead as well, and we'll say unsubscribe from auth. We'll say this dot unsubscribe from auth equals this auth. Make sure I got the right one. Yep. On auth state changed. This will fire whenever they go from logged out to logged in, or from logged in to logged out. So when that happens, we'll get either a user object or we'll get null. Right? Null if they are logged out, a user object if they have logged in. So all I'll do with that is I'll say this dot set state with the user. We'll flip over. Right, you see there is a user logged in. If I look, we've got the user passing the user in. And let me look at this authentication component. We need to pass that. Pass those properties to that component as well. And you see I got a whole lot for free here, right? This is provided by the Google OAuth mechanism. I can get my, like, 2/3 of my son's face. And then mine, I get the email address. That's currently just the current time. You get a display name that's formatted. With a lot of OAuth providers, that'll automatically be in there. Let's go ahead. There's a lot of properties on the user object, but most of them aren't very useful. There are a few, though. So let's do console log user. So here's that user. A lot of not useful stuff, but you can see there's the display name, an email. If you're OAuthing with Google, you'll get this email verified as true because it already knows that. There is some metadata like the last sign-in time and stuff like that that you can use as well. But the rest of these don't really mean a whole lot. But there are a few kind of useful ones hanging out in there that you can use. We are using the photo URL that you can see here, the display name, the email address, and the UID are the four that we're using this application. But there's a few more hiding in there. But most of these are just kind of metadata. Anonymous is kind of a cool one that we're not going to get into today, but I want to like bring your attention to, which is you can basically log people in anonymously. You're like, why would I ever want to do that? Which is basically you can store a certain amount of like cookie state, which is like, let's say they go to your store application and they start putting things in the cart and they don't have an account yet, and then they create the account. You can then merge that anonymous user with their real one, and track a few things in there to kind of have a better user experience as well. And that's just a method on Auth called, I think it's sign in anonymously or something along those lines.